Hey, what's up everybody? This is Dave from NetcodeSource.com, and in this video series I'm going to be going over a rotational guide on DE Inferno. So to start out, we're going to go over the most basic setup, which is a passive CT setup, and the setup that the majority of teams are going to play, and how they rotate, and why they rotate. So to start out, you're going to have 5 CTs, obviously. We're going to assume they're playing passive and you have map control. So the CTs are going to have one guy B in sight, one guy B in CT spawn, then you're going to have one guy arches, usually around moto or library, generally your opper, one player site, and one player pit. Now, let's assume the terrorists have map control. They have halls control, so they have about 3 guys in the halls. They have one guy in alt, or bench, or red car, doesn't matter which one, and they have one guy holding logs. So, those are the 5 view players. This player is one player, and then these 3 players are in the halls, and then this player is holding them off B. This is what's going to happen once you start your A take. So, say this is a smoke, and you smoke up porch, or excuse me, you smoke up the arches, and you want to make your path up porch and out halls. When you do that, and you start making all that noise, this player is going to immediately rotate to spawn. And he's gonna play around the statue or in the arches, or he's gonna spot like this. This library player is sometimes he's gonna stay library, but oftentimes he's gonna come to moto and play around here so that he could help them when they come up porch and end halls, and he can help the site guy and the pit guy. So essentially, if you do that, they should have 3 CTs there if they're playing a passive setup. Now, if you guys end up going up on the arch as a terrorist, instead of going porch, this player is still going to be there, but this player is going to stay library, and they're going to have a crossfire there. Once that happens, these players at porch and pit, they have 2 options. They could either stay there, or they can get aggressive, or they could fall over to here and help. And now you would all of a sudden have 3 people fighting you with the arches. So those are the proper rotations that you could have at A. Finally, the B player is going to either stay site and he's going to rotate through spawn, or he could rotate through B and flank. But this B player needs to be very, very patient, and he either has to rotate when you see bomb, and even then he has to be very careful of lurkers, of the terrorists staying around team middle or alt. So that's going to be a basic rotational guide of what's going to happen if you hit the A site on a default CT setup, either going up the porch or going up the ramp. To further explain, I'm going to show you simply what happens when you're the B player. From here, when noise starts happening, he rotates towards here and he picks up the arches. Now, when they go towards porch and halls, the library player is going to rotate out of library and come towards moto to help anybody jumping out into the site or into the pit. That's what's going to happen on an A take. So essentially, the banana player picks up the arches, and this player is able to float around arches and A site. Next, we have the arch take. Once the arch take happens, the banana player is again going to rotate through here. The library player can either stay library, or he can go to moto yet again. And once that happens, if they start taking arches, they have a crossfire from one player in the arches and one player here. Now, once that happens, the site player can either come and he can even help. The pit player has to play very disciplined and stay there. And now this site player has options. He can either come and help and even try to kill them with 3 people there, or he can get aggressive porch and cut off that lane right here, like so. Or if you think they're going to hold it fine, he could simply stay here and hold. Those are the options that all the players at A have. Again, to reiterate, the player in Pope or Pit has to be very disciplined, and he cannot move from his spot, and he's kind of the anchor at the A site. Now, the banana player that's dedicated to B is similar to the Pit player. He's the anchor. He has to stay at all costs. If they try to sneak bomb, he has to kill them, and he has to play for a lot of information. Now, if he sees bomb, he could still rotate through spawn or banana, but again, he has to be very, very patient. He has to clear everything very methodically, and if he dies, it's going to make the round very tough, because if someone is delaying and they want to kill him, and they do, the C's might have the option of going all the way back to B and planting. So the two anchors at A and B need to be very disciplined, very patient, and know their role. Alright guys, now I'm going to explain how the rotations work when they hit banana on Inferno. Generally speaking, when you hit banana on Inferno, you're going to have one CT around main, one CT in sight. What's going to happen is when they hit it, this CT main is usually going to get blockaded by a smoke here, so he can't do much. He's going to end up going towards spindle. Once that happens, the arch player is going to rotate through here. He's going to spam through this smoke and throw flashes around the pool area in here to try to help the spindle player and the sight player. He's the first to rotate and the first to react off a banana hit. Now, what's going to happen then is the player in A site is going to rotate through here, and he's going to get in the arches. Once he's in the arches, he's going to stay around here and just hold for a second and see if any terrorist is going to be coming through the middle, like so. Once that happens, the pit player, when he finally rotates, is usually going to come through here, look under porch, see if anybody's there, and if they're not, he will flank banana. Those are the rotations that are going to happen on a B hit on Inferno. Now I'm just going to show you in free look how everyone's going to rotate. This player main, when he gets smoked out around here, is going to go through construction and fight them at the spindle. The arches player is going to be the first to act. He's going to rotate through the library, go to here, flash through pool, and try to help his teammates as best as possible, and then either run through the smoke or take construction control. Once that happens, that means arches is open. This player from sight is going to rotate and pick up the arches. He's going to end up inside the arches of here, and he's going to wait around here, making sure nobody flanks, and then finally he's going to meet up with his teammates and retake B. Last but not least, the pit player is going to be in pit. He'll get out of pit, he'll go through here, he'll clear middle like that with the arch player. They know nobody's flanking CT spawn, and then finally he'll flank banana. Alright guys, the next thing we're going to discuss is what happens when a player gets picked off on either the porch or the halls and you're left in a 4v4 or a 4v5 situation of the CTs. So, generally speaking, when that happens, one of the A players will fall back and he'll usually play pit. Once he plays pit, this arch player is usually going to stay here until one of the banana players rotates off and gets inside the arches. And once that happens, this player will play back and he could play around A site or moto. And he kind of is responsible for helping anybody wrapping and also helping anybody that's coming up porch and halls and fighting over here. So you kind of have two people on the wrap, and you also kind of have two people at A site. That's what's going to happen if there's any 4v4 or 4v5 scenario. The next thing that could happen is, in any 4v4 or 4v5 scenario, is instead of this player rotating towards here, these two banana players will push. Pushing is going to give them the information that they need to properly react to anything that's going to happen. And if they do the timing right, they could simply backstab anybody coming up middle and kind of be in the play. They can give their A guys information, or they can get one down here towards logs or here or even car, and then this banana player can severely rotate off and come towards A, and again you're just going to have 3A. And instead of staying in the arches, he can come and he can play here, and then you could have one guy A site, one guy porch, or this guy doesn't have to play in the cubby and he can end up playing library as well. So it's going to cause a chain reaction whenever you're in that situation, generally speaking. Again, just to add another visual cue, I'm going to show you what the arch player would do. Once one of those A players is picked off, he's usually going to stay towards here until the banana player gets around here towards the statue. Once that happens, he's going to be falling back, and he's going to be playing around moto and A site to quickly help anybody in the pit. Now, the next thing that's going to happen is, if the A player gets killed, you could either have the B player not rotate here, and instead push banana. And once he pushes banana with his other banana player, then they could have more information. They know nobody's banana. They could tell their A players the information that they found out. They're going to be hitting A quickly, etc., etc. And it'll cause another chain reaction where you're either going to push B relatively quickly and try to backstab them while the terrorists are coming up middle, or you're going to simply leave one player there with that information and rotate and make the long truck back towards the arches, and then he could severely over-rotate and play in a site, and you could have 2 pit and 1 A site, or he could play in the arches, or you could reaggress mid. So those are the options that the players have when in a 4v5 scenario.